the B-21 Raider will likely play a role in future maritime strikes. The dramatic reveal of the B-21 Raider long-range stealth bomber left a few dropped jaws, and plenty more open questions about the bomber's exact capability, secrets jealously guarded by the military. In the op-ed below, IISS's Ben Ho argues that whatever the military plans to use the bomber for, it should also consider a novel role for the high-tech airframe fighting at sea. In recent years, much ink has been spilled over China's touted anti-access/area denial A2/AD thicket and how best the United States and its allies could circumvent it during a Western Pacific conflict. The more popular of these counter A2/AD measures include extending the striking reach of the U.S. aircraft carrier force through tanker drones, as well as potentially introducing more capable missiles for the Navy's surface and submarine force. But another concept that has been under the radar, but which seems to be gaining traction, is the use of Air Force long-range bombers in an anti-surface warfare ASUW, or ship-killing role. Various military thinkers, including retired U.S. Air Force General and Breaking Defense contributor David Depchula, as well as this author, have advocated deploying strategic bombers like the B-1 Lancer armed with anti-ship weapons against the People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN. And with the Air Force's next-generation B-21 Raider slated to come on board towards the end of this decade, there has understandably been some chatter over a possible ASUW remit for the new Northrop Grumman aircraft. Repurposing the B-1s could be helpful, but the B-21 Raider could be a true game-changer if its reported capabilities are anything to go by. One key operational advantage heavies, like the B-1 Lancer and B-21 Raider, have over other weapon delivery assets, especially tactical combat aircraft, would be their much larger payloads. The mainstay U.S. naval strike fighter, the F divided by a -18E divided by F Super Hornet, can deploy with a handful of long-range anti-ship missiles, LRASM, a few hundred miles out from a carrier. Tellingly, the LRASM loadout of a single bomber equates that of several Super Hornets. Indeed, the B-1 can carry 24 such weapons, while the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber could potentially have a capacity of 16 LRASM. And over intercontinental distances too. Given its smaller size, the B-21 Raider is believed to have a payload only between half and three-quarters that of the B-2 Spirit. Little reliable information currently exists for the aircraft. Nevertheless, that should still give the B-21 Raider a decent notional standoff ASUW capability of 8 to 12 LRASM. Therefore, even a relatively small complement of half a dozen Raiders, which would combine to around 50 standoff anti-ship weapons, should give pause to Chinese naval planners. Exploiting the B-21 Raider high level of low observability, it is over 30 years ahead of the B-2 Spirit in this regard, and deploying it for the penetrating strike, as opposed to standoff, role would enable the new bomber to tote a larger payload and pose a deadlier threat to enemy fleets. After all, while standoff weapons are integral to defeating an adversary like China, they are less effective for various operational reasons against mobile targets such as ships out at sea. In the penetrating strike role, the B-21 Raider would be able to, with a considerable degree of survivability, fly deep into contested airspace with direct attack munitions that are shorter range and smaller, but cheaper and in greater numbers. Indeed, when the B-2 Spirit gets phased out from the 2030s, the B-21 Raider might be the only bomber capable of surviving in the expanding Chinese air defense bubble, as one study puts it. Keeping in mind that the Raider's payload is estimated to be at least half that of the Spirit, the former could notionally be armed with nearly 100 of the ASU-W-capable small diameter bombs, or SDB. The B-2 Spirit can carry 192 of such weapons. A detachment of SDB-armed B-21s roving in the Western Pacific will no doubt leave a big question mark in the minds of enemy naval commanders. To be sure, the SDB weighs only 250 pounds and seems a tad lightweight compared to the LRASM 1,000 pounds warhead. However, the small diameter bomb can bring about mission kills by inflicting topside damage on PLAN ships, and deployed en masse, it has a good chance of overwhelming Chinese defenses. Not to mention that the SDB, while short-ranged compared to the LRASM, still has a meaningful striking reach of 40 nautical miles. Besides the B-21 Raider weapon loadout, its non-kinetic capabilities could also give it a potent naval role. One analyst is right on the mark when he contends that the aircraft's abilities to gather, process, and share information at exceptionally long ranges and inside defended airspace, including over naval task groups, must be recognized. Indeed, the B-21's role as a quarterback is arguably just as essential as its door kicker one. After it has breached the A2/AD barrier, the B-21 Raider could assume this battle management role by directing play and orchestrating follow-on anti-ship missions, which non-stealthy Air Force assets or even platforms from other services would undertake. Earlier this month, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, published a study based on wargaming a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. The report is clearly in the bombers for ASU-W camp, as it maintains that bombers capable of launching standoff anti-ship ordnance offer the fastest way to defeat the invasion with the least amount of U.S. losses. To this end, CSIS recommends that all bombers can carry the full range of munitions, adding that, given the LRASM centrality in destroying Chinese surface forces, it needs to be employable from all aircraft for maximum flexibility. The missile is currently compatible only with the B-1 Lancer and F divided by a -18E divided by F Super Hornet. Going forward, Washington would do well to give the B-21 Raider a definitive ASU-W portfolio when it becomes operational. By 2027, there should be some 20 B-21s in service, and apportioning just a fraction of them, say 4 or 5 aircraft, for Maritime Strike would undoubtedly send a robust message to Beijing around the tail-end period of the ominous Davidson window. Nevertheless, the lessons learned and best practices from operating the B-1 Lancer with LRASM combination should guide the Air Force if it recognizes the maritime role for the B-21 Raider. And the reality is that while penetrating a modern A2/AD bubble for a naval mission is new territory requiring new concepts being developed in real time, a lack of precedent cannot be a reason to avoid developing a strategy for how it would work. As the overall size of the B-21 Raider fleet increases, the service should consider standing up a B-21 Raider squadron dedicated to the ship-killing business. Ideally, elements from this unit would deploy regularly with the Indo-Pacific Bomber Task Force, or its future iterations, while clearly signaling its raison d'etre. Such a measure should contribute profoundly to America deterring, and if necessary, help defeat Chinese aggression in its maritime environment.